And yes, thank you, Ulrika, and good morning, everybody. So I also have a little disclaimer, is that what I'm going to say here is not necessarily a representative view of my organization, Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, or necessarily from MedTech Europe, the cooperation of EDMA and Eucomed for medical device manufacturers. Just a little bit of introduction to myself. As I'm a regulatory affairs manager at Ortho Clinical Diagnostics. We are headquartered in Raritan, New Jersey, where we have a manufacturing site. We also have a manufacturing site in Rochester, New York State, up by the Great Lakes. But I'm based in our relatively new manufacturing facility in South Wales. We have a wide portfolio of products across transfusion medicine, both for both immunohematology and blood screening, clinical chemistry and immunodiagnostic products. UDI is not necessarily my day job. As I say, I work in regulatory affairs, and primarily I support our business across the Middle East and Africa. And it was in last December I had the pleasure of visiting Riyadh to have 2 meetings with the Saudi FDA, and I actually met very briefly the engineer at the Saudi FDA who'd been given the task of working on a UDI program in Saudi Arabia, and as we know, that is in development. But fortunately for me, when I joined Ortho Clinical 5 years ago, we were still part then of the Johnson & Johnson family of companies. We're now a standalone organization. But through Johnson & Johnson, we'd already implemented GS1, and we'd already put barcodes on all our products. So the first element of UDI had been done for me. Now, so coming back to my role with UDI, I was actually present at the conference in Washington when I think Jay formally announced to the world unique device identification and the FDA's plans. Now, I think Laurent was in the room as well, I believe, and Ulrika, and probably a few other people. Then coming back to Europe, EDMA quickly wanted to make a statement on this. And so we developed a position paper to put the first industry perspective on unique device identification and the role it can play specifically for in vitro diagnostic devices. And I had the pleasure of presenting that at the GS1 conference in Granada in 2008. But then when Jay and the FDA published the draft rule, my regulatory management in the US asked the question, what are we going to do? Now, being based in Europe, I couldn't sort of sit still, so I put up my hand and I said, I know what we need to do. So I took upon that task of leading our UDI program. And so we have 96 US Class 3 products, which have been registered and they're available to see in the FDA's database, the Good ID. Our next plan is to work to the deadline for next September for our 300 Class 2 products, and then to complete our portfolio for the remaining with our Class 1 products. So, coming back to MedTech Europe, working with great pleasure of working with people such as Volker and Jenny at the joint now EDMA Eucomed UDI group. It's quite a big group, but we are active. And last year we published two papers. The first paper was published in September, is an implementation guideline for manufacturers to explain UDI and to give some basic guidelines on how manufacturers can set up processes and a program for unique device identification. The second paper is on the to help define the UDI database and what we believe the European database should look like and what it should contain. I suppose it's a sort of a bridging paper between the IMDRF document and the very detailed US FDA's final rule. Now, condensing a few of Laurent's slides into one slide, this is just to, again, to highlight, but to demonstrate that the common appreciation that industry has and that we're aligned with the Commission is that, yes, one UDI database is a utopia, but as an industry and as a manufacturer, we have to accept that there will be regional databases and we will have to work with those. But what will it look like in Europe? Will it look like the good ID with the EU flag in place of the FDA's logo? What we do know is that there is a formal agreement in place. It's a TTIP between the FDA and the European Commission that enables a formal exchange of information. And I know that the FDA have provided a lot of detail to the Commission already to help the Commission to start to define and develop its database. But from the industry perspective, Laurent gave an overview of where we are in the case of the legislative process. But we just want to highlight that there are certain elements that do need to remain especially focused during the trialogue phase throughout the remainder of this year. Traceability is only going to be successful if all of the stakeholders and economic operators play a part. And of course, compatibility is imperative, and that the electronic database system, it must be compatible with other systems and to enable the exchange of regulatory information in an accessible and meaningful way. Because any system that's introduced, it does require huge investments across all economic operators, not just manufacturers. And timing is important in order to limit fragmentation, particularly at a European level, where we do already have a series of places of national databases where manufacturers are having to work on a daily basis. So, as we know, around the EU, there are databases in place for medical devices, and as a manufacturer, we are obligated to be feeding information into these databases to help our business in these countries. This is just also to highlight that on a daily basis, I receive requests from our distributors, particularly in Eastern Europe and across the Middle East and Africa, not for UDI, although a request for GTINs is becoming more and more commonplace, but for other elements that are required to pull together, other data elements that we fed into the FDA. And so it just becomes more and more apparent that the world is becoming much more aware and is becoming practically involved and is requiring data in order to do business. I mean, in respect to the legislative process, as Laurent said, that for medical devices, it used to be 12 months ago, it was part of DG Sanco. And at the MedTech Europe conference in October of last year, Madame Lecrenier stated that there is a will, there is a desire to help move things forward for Europe, but at the moment there's no legal basis to do so. And so the Commission is sort of not bound to be able to start to work on a database until there is a legal basis on an approved document. But yes, I can confirm, and as Laurent said, there is a will. Now within DG Grow, there is a specifically defined team of people working on Eucomed. They have established a multifactorial steering committee, and underneath that, working groups. That steering committee is not just from the Commission. It involves stakeholders from competent authorities, notified bodies, and including industry. And I will sit at the level of the steering committee. And I know there are other people who are going to contribute to the working groups and help the Commission to bring UDIMED into a reality. Because it will be UDIMED 3. It's just a slightly different perspective on the house of UDIMED, is that UDI will be the foundation stone. But as Laurent said, the initial focus is going to be on the registration of devices and economic operators. And then beyond that, the Commission will work from, the Commission is, the team in DG Grow is already working on the business model and the architecture for UDIMED 3, and is then going to work through and develop, the pillars of the UDIMED house to be able to support the full implementation of the new regulations for medical devices in Europe. And so with recent developments is that just a couple of weeks ago, EDMA and Eucomed met with Salvatore Da Cunto at the Commission to help highlight the particular elements that should be a focus during the trialogue discussions. Is at the moment there is a risk of divergency because there are certain elements of inconsistency between the FDA and the IMDRF. It's primarily in the detail, but as Laurent said, it's important to have these discussions so that when it comes to the handshake at the end of the year, that it is a handshake with a smile and everybody can move forward. And with respect to national databases, there is a risk of fragmentation, and with that there could be a loss of traceability, which completely undermines the sort of philosophy of UDI. At the moment, there is no process. There's a lack of definition for how industry can apply for exemptions and alternatives, and if required, time extensions. The FDA were very clear on communicating a process to allow industry, to work with the regulators to come to an agreement for certain elements, and this is what we'd like in Europe. And also to have more definition around the obligations for each of the stakeholders, for all of the economic operators that are going to be involved in UDI across Europe. And so, with respect to UDI, there is certainly more to come. And I think I need to acknowledge Geraldine for this photograph. But this is it's a village in Suffolk in the south of the UK. So, I thank you for your attention.